You're listening to Garibaldi Red, a Nottingham Forest podcast brought to you by Nottinghamshire Live.
Hello, welcome to Garibaldi Red as we look forward to the next chapter in this increasingly tense relegation battle with Nottingham Forest taking on Newcastle United on Friday night at the City Ground. And joining me to discuss that game, Brendan Johnson's injury and how we're all feeling about the relegation battle in general is Michael Temple. Temps, good afternoon, how are you?
I've had a brilliant little insight into Davies' household where the kids are banned from the kitchen and forced to live off crumbs they found down the back of the sofa while you take all the Wi-Fi and talk football with me. So yeah, I'm pretty chilled, I think, compared to life in the Davies household.
Oh, well, yeah, right to reply. Partly true. They are banned from the kitchen and the kitchen door is open to try and get a Wi-Fi signal, continuing the tour of my house to get close to the box. But yeah, they're taking the Wi-Fi signal. So they've got milk or water and a mini roll or a pack of fruit strings. And they're pleased to be quiet for the next 30 minutes or so. So hopefully the Wi-Fi signal holds up and they hold up their end of the bargain as well. And you've had an interesting weekend. We will get into Forest in a bit, but you had an interesting weekend trying to get back to England and catch the game as well, haven't you?
Yeah, caught up in the French rail strikes, but did manage to find my way to the Westfield Centre in Lille, where they have excellent Wi-Fi, and I was able to sit there and take in Forest Spurs in its entirety. Thankfully, then had to listen to you boys dissect that one on Monday. But the one thing I would say is that Forest have lurched from terrible form to really good form, and the other way, without any rhyme or reason. And it isn't that long ago that we found ourselves on the wrong end of that Newcastle defeat early in the season, and then first game of the season, then turned up the next week and flipped it, turned it around with a team that's very different to the one that's going to play now in beating West Ham 1-0. So whilst you rightly went into some of the reasons why we weren't at our sharpest at the weekend, there's been two instances, the West Ham game and the Spurs Cup game, which stand out in my mind as good examples of where out of absolutely nowhere, Forest have turned it around and turned it on and achieved an unforeseen result. So that's the hope that I'm pinning to for Friday night.
So we'll expand on all that. We've got a couple of clips. We've got Steve Cooper on Brendan Johnson, which we'll start with in a sec. So obviously that's a big talking point. And then I caught up with a colleague who works in Newcastle, Andrew Musgrove, who hosts the Everything is Black and White podcast. I've got a couple of clips with him, which we'll talk around. And obviously Temps is team prediction. You look very dapper, by the way. You had a haircut recently.
Yeah, I've had a haircut. I've got a bit of a lazy beard as well. So yeah,
I always have the lazy beard, just not the sharp hair. We both got the grey, but you're looking a bit more trim than me. So.
Steady.
Right, Brendan Johnson. Then we should start with him. Went off against Spurs with a groin strain and had a scan on Monday. And the manager did his press conference about a couple of hours before we were recording this. So I'll just play a clip from Steve Cooper on Brennan to inform people of his prospects of playing in this one and the games to come. And then I'll catch up with Temps on the other side.
Yeah, he's had a scan. Obviously, when you have a scan, it tells you something, but also you have to treat the player. So it's unlikely that Brennan will be involved in the weekend, but there's a small chance. So we want to give him every chance to see if he's available. If he is, then great. We'll try and use him. If not, then yeah, it's just one of them things. So. Not completely ruling him out, but at the same time, you know, when you walk off with a bit of a muscle injury, you know, it can take a little bit longer than a week to recover, but we'll see.
I did that in a rush. I should have turned the volume up on it, so sorry if people couldn't quite hear it, but I think everyone did. But anyway, you said a very small chance that he can play at the weekend, and then we've got the international break. So touch wood, he's back on the other side at least. But I know Steve Cooper there, Temp, said that there's a chance he'll play, but do you think he's maybe a bit of a red herring to throw to Newcastle there?
I think you said earlier to me when we were having a little text conversation that we've kind of learned how to speak Cooper, and that's as close as he's going to get for ruling him out this weekend. So no, we're not going to see Brendan Johnson start this game. It creates a massive headache. He's been by far and away our greatest goal threat, and I think it'll be a huge miss, particularly when it's allied to Plan B, which I think is what Chris Wood has become now. I think he would undoubtedly have started if he was fit. So a bit of a double blow in having neither Brennan nor Chris Wood available for selection on Friday night. So the big question that we need to get into at some point is, where are the goals going to come from?
Okay, so give us your predicted 11, and then we'll branch off into that, and then I'll play the clips from Andrew, and we'll have a look at the league table. But who are you expecting to start?
Yeah, so I see no change in the back four. I think we'll retain Aurier, Lodi, Worrell and Felipe. I see Freuler, Shelvey and Mangala in that midfield trio. I would like to see Yatesy involved. I just think there was another Cooper clip where he said he's perhaps not quite ready to start yet. So I'm expecting to see Morgan Gibbs-White and Emmanuel Dennis joined by Sam Surridge. I've got a slight suspicion that Cooper may prefer Andre Ayew. I think the experience he has of him is far greater than the experience I have watching him. My personal preference would be for Surridge. I think his the qualities he has in terms of endeavour and finishing, fox in the box, outweigh what I've seen of Andre Ayew. I don't think he's the answer at this point in time. So there's a probably most debate around that position, but I would personally vouch for Sam Surridge ahead of Andre Ayew.
Yeah, just on Yates, like Temp says, there was a bit later in the press conference where he kind of says he's still being guided by the medical team. I got that impression, which is obviously the right thing to do. And he kind of intimated he wouldn't quite be ready to start. I know he played an hour for the under-21s in the week, so it would be unusual if he started the 21s game and started for the first team. But I think we'll see his minutes ramped up. Emmanuel Dennis then, Temps, I think he's most likely to start. I was going to say divides opinion. He doesn't really divide opinion because I don't think anyone's been too high on him for Forest this season. But has he done a bit better recently for you?
The appearance that impressed me most was Fulham away. I went to that game, and every time he got the ball, he made a difference. He does engage defenders. He attracts fouls. He's got quick feet, and I think the reason Forest fans are frustrated with Emmanuel Dennis is because they see in flashes what he can be. Then they see long periods of time when he's nowhere near those standards. So this is the proverbial chance to step up, isn't it? He's the next cab off the rank. He's been getting minutes from the bench. There's an injury has struck down Brennan Johnson, and all of a sudden he needs to perform. He showed last year why we signed him, why we spent this amount of money on Emmanuel Dennis, one of the most expensive transfers in the history of our club. We see flashes of why that happened. We need to see another one on Friday night because I think there are definitely a significant number amongst the Forest support that have written him off. I haven't yet because those flashes are there. But we need to see a goal from him, don't we? We need to see a reason to keep him in the side. He's going to start the game on Friday night, and on balance of probability of what we've seen so far, he's been more impactful from the bench. So a 90-minute performance from Emmanuel Dennis is long overdue, and I hope he delivers it for us against Newcastle.
I think he's been better since the World Cup. I don't think we're setting a particularly high benchmark here, but I thought he was one of Forest's better players against Spurs in terms of positive intent and trying to make something happen. And he won quite a few fouls. And I think Spurs defenders found him a little predictable. He kept making the move inside and losing the ball. Obviously, he's got a knack of losing the ball in dangerous areas, which he can't really do. But Brennan does have that license as well himself. So I think I'm hoping that he's kind of that big game player. He's going to seize the mantle and really show us what he can do finally, because I'm not sure. Maybe right wing's his favoured position as well, and he's not had the chance to play there yet. He's more of a wide striker than a central striker. So,
I think his window of opportunity is quite limited though, because I see after the international break the chance to put out as close to what is the ultimate selection from this squad that we've been able to at any point during the season. And for me, that's
with the 1 year as well.
Yeah, Taiwo comes back into that with Brennan, obviously Gibbs-White in behind. I see that central midfield three mix of Koyate, Yates and Shelvey being one to try. The fullbacks are easy in Lodi and Aurier. And then you're picking Felipe and Worrell. A fit Bolly might have half a chance of getting back in there. And then, yeah, for me, Navas is ahead of Dean Henderson. But we're perhaps only one game away from being able to field a team like that. So anyone who's got designs in forcing their way in after the international break needs to be aware there's going to be far more Forest players available to select from. And that shouldn't be lost on Emmanuel Dennis. This is his chance to earn a shirt, retain a shirt, and salvage his season as a Forest player, because there's plenty of players we've all changed our minds about and been convinced about off the back of a series of performances, and that's all we want to see. Yeah,
and even if he has a good game, then maybe it's not enough to cement that place longer term. So I think, like you say, a 1 year he's going to be back in once he's fit and firing. But it seems that it's going to take him time to get going. And at worst, Dennis can make himself first option off the bench. Newcastle as well, we should mention, has been back in full training, so he'll be pushing for Worrell's place certainly. But we had to discuss about Newcastle on Monday, obviously. But he's not played much football. I think it's a lot to ask of a player to deliver their best form with no under-21s games and no football in 6 months. So that's going to be an interesting development. What about the midfield? How do you? I've always discussed that as well with the gripes around it. I was one of the things that Andrew was saying, and I'll play some clips from him, as I said shortly, but he felt Newcastle's midfield was superior to Forest, and Forest couldn't match them, and that would be a key area. Do you think he's got a point there?
Yeah, it is a key area. I'm not going to get drawn into the blend of the opposition. I think that I listened intently actually to the podcast you recorded with Gary, Fletch and Greg in the week, and one of Fletcher's points around Shelvey and Freuler trying to outcompete each other and how deep they could collect the ball was a really interesting point. I think the scrutiny at this moment in time is on Freuler, because he has a very different game to John Joe Shelvey. He has a relatively short range of passing, and it's not him who should be the distributor from central midfield. He's the organizer. It's Shelvey they want on the ball. It's Shelvey that under pressure needs to come and collect that ball off the centre halves. But also it's Shelvey that when we do find periods of possession in the game, we want on the ball further up the pitch to develop meaningful attacks. I think there's a lot of scrutiny on Freuler at the minute. A lot of people have vouched for him as being one that does the unseen running, the orchestration, such as his reputation. But I don't think we've seen anything like enough consistency in his performances to justify this bulletproof selection that he's enjoyed for the past few weeks and months. I think there are a lot of people watching him quite critically now, and he's another one for me that needs to really step up. Maybe he's not compatible with Shelvey. Maybe he does occupy his space, stand on his toes a bit. But I think that the plus side of Shelvey's range of passing and more attacking intent means that, for me, he can be part of a Forest team that's going to score and create more goal-scoring chances than Freuler ever will. So, yeah, I'm going to keep a close eye on him this week. And I just wonder, with Koyate and Yatesy knocking on the door, if that automatic selection that he's enjoyed for the past few games might be under threat.
I think, I agree. And then obviously you talk about a short window to impress. The same applies to Mangala, doesn't it? In terms of consistent performances, he's been massively inconsistent, really, hasn't he? He'll have a good game off the bench and he gets a start, and he falls into the trap of doing big errors after good work. I think I've said about him before, and it's an opportunity for him and Freuler, isn't it? If Forest dominate this game or win this midfield battle, then I think they probably do win the game, don't they? Well, no, that's too much of a stretch. They don't lose the game, maybe.
Yeah, I mean, Nilton is a great result. A clean sheet against a Newcastle side who find themselves, 4 points outside of the top four with 2 games in hand. They're a serious team. I think that the Swedish striker, 60 million quid, but he looks the part, doesn't he? Almiron is a player transformed. Pope's been a bit of a wild child last couple of weeks. We could do with him doing something stupid on the edge of his box on Friday night. But yeah, there's no accident. There's method to what they're doing. They've recruited well. I've got so much respect for Eddie Howe. I think he's got an appointment with England one day. But yeah, the challenge is going to be that if we were to concede in the absence of key players, you can't really foresee a situation where we're free scoring against Newcastle at the City Ground. 1-0 would be unbelievable and the most likely winning scoreline. But for me, the fundamental of this performance needs to be a clean sheet. We can't concede and expect to win this game.
Oh, 100%. You're right. I got very carried away there. Well, winning the midfield battle will certainly help Forest. You mentioned Alexander Isak there. So one of the things I asked Andrew about and we discussed was danger men respectively for each team. And this is what he said.
Callum Wilson hasn't scored since October. He just doesn't look the same player that he was before he went to the World Cup. And Isak not only scored against Wolves, tremendous header, but just looks so dangerous, running at the defence, close control with the ball. Really good display. And he needed it as well, given that opportunity, replacing Newcastle's number 9. So yeah, it'll be Isak, and it'll probably be an unchanged side as well. Eddie Howe doesn't like to change a winning side, and I can't see who he would drop out. He made 5 changes, a couple were kind of enforced. Almiron comes off the bench and grabs the winner. But is that enough to get him back in the side? He's probably the one person who may have a case to get back in. And on our match preview, I said I'd bring him back in for St. Maximin and keep Jacob Murphy on the other side. But like I said, Howe doesn't really like to make changes to a winning side, so it probably will be unchanged. And, you know, those players who miss out, I don't think can have any complaints because the players who came in took their opportunities, and that's kind of what you need. And you know.
So who worries you for Newcastle then?
Guimaraes is a class act between the boxes. I think he was an inspired signing. The best of St. Maximin should worry anyone. He's a highlight reel player, but yeah, quick feet and really dangerous. Isak hasn't been free scoring, but as your colleague said there, he just looks such a threat when he gets the ball. He occupies defenders. He's very good in the air. And he's sharp, and I think he has the potential to be a 20-goal man at some point in the future. I'd be more concerned if Almiron did return. I think he certainly adds to the team. He had that red-hot goal-scoring streak, but he's creative as well, and just looks like such a different player to the one that was a frustration for Newcastle fans and the sides that had struggled in recent years. Longstaff and Willock, we can get at them. I think we can prove more than a match for them. Not particularly concerned. Trippier is dangerous from set pieces, and Pope's a player that I respect immensely, but he's proved to be hot-headed in the last few weeks with that handball, and he was very lucky with the one that he got away with at the weekend as well. I think Shah was the standout performer when we played Newcastle in the opening game of the season. And it was a demonstration for Brennan about the difference between Championship defenders and Premier League defenders, and he went away and has added a lot to his game since then. But yeah, look, for me, Guimaraes is the heartbeat of this team, and he's the type of player who I think Forest missed the most. A true conductor who can do a bit of everything with relentless energy and extremely tidy and organised. I think he's been one of their standouts.
I agree with what you say about Almiron as well. I think Trippier is a more dangerous player with Almiron in the team. He seems to do a lot of kind of that niggly forward work that frees up space for Trippier. He's got such quality if he can get into the byline or deep crossing positions that he would worry me. So I would be quite happy if he doesn't start. I'll play the second clip from Andrew talking about his match prediction and how he's viewing the game, and then get your take on the back of it. And so I give mine as soon as he finishes talking. So we'll go into that.
Yeah, I mean, look, they had only before Sunday beaten Fulham in the league in 2023, and they were playing well though, and they were creating chances. They just weren't taking them. And I think what we saw on Sunday was that clinical edge, which has been missing. And it was that was the only thing that was kind of missing, you know, not taking your chances. They had a couple in the cup final. They had some against Man City, as you point out. Callum Wilson of old would have, easily put that in the back of the net, 10 times over. But it's just when you look's down and your form's out, that's what's going to happen. So I think Friday's a big game because they'd been on such a bad run of form when you consider what they've done earlier in the season. One good performance, and it was a good performance against Wolves. One very important win needs to be followed up with a win against Nottingham Forest. It's side in a similar situation to Wolves, one where Newcastle will go in as favourites. And if you're serious about the top four, then no disrespect to Forest, you have to be beating teams like Forest, regardless of their brilliant home record. These are the games you have to win. Newcastle have struggled recently couldn't beat Bournemouth, couldn't beat Leeds. They've struggled with sides around them. We're fortunate, some might argue, against Wolves, should Pope have been sent off. Will that luck be with them this Friday? I think they'll have to be at the very best to beat Forest, because as good as the performance was against Wolves, does that paper over the cracks slightly? Is probably one argument. But look, if you create the chances, Matt, and you take them, that's all that matters. That it's as simple as that, isn't it? That wins your games.
True. Would you take a point? You wouldn't take a point then?
No, you're going down there for all three. I mean, obviously, if you can't win, you don't lose. But I think you'd be very disappointed if you were Newcastle not to be taking all three from Forest, because you played so well against Wolves. You've got the chase for the top four is in Newcastle's hands, but it's only in Newcastle's hands if they keep winning, and then that sets them up for the games in hands that they've got on Spurs. So yeah, Eddie Howe will be going. He goes in every game to win it. He doesn't care too much about the opposition. It's about what he does, what his team can do. So he'll definitely be setting them for a win, and I think you'll be bitterly disappointed if you win Newcastle coming away and having only picked up a point. And I think they will beat Forest. I think they'll beat them, and I'm going to go 3-0 to Newcastle.
3-0. Oh my gosh.
3-0.
3-0. I mean, I don't think it'll be 3-0, but you can see that kind of. I'm not knocking the mentality of a person who covers and supports a team that's doing very well and is pushing for the top four. What do you think about what Andrew said in general there before the scoreline?
I've lost all respect for Andrew now. I'm more interested in knowing what Anton Deck and Jimmy Nail think the score is going to be, because 3-0 is a bit pie in the sky, because we're going to have a game plan built around defensive discipline, I would hope. We're trying to compete, establish a foothold in the game, and maybe try and nick it late on if the game opens up. We're not going to go gung-ho and sit back and find ourselves 3-0 down, I don't think. How do we win this game? I mean, look, that's the most pertinent question, right? We've built this position in the Premier League where we're in the mix with 8 teams who could, in any reasonable circumstance, be relegated. Our away form is dire. We're not scoring goals on the road, but we're a different side at home. We've got this new problem of being without a key player in Brennan Johnson. So I think that's it. We have to stay in this game for as long as we can. I think it's going to be tough, but I thought that ahead of West Ham, Liverpool, Palace, Leeds, all these games where we've pulled out a performance at the City Ground. We are a team transformed at home. We have lurched between really bad and really good performances. So there's no reason why we can't get a point out of this game. If we do win, for me, the only possible way to do it is 1-0. I don't see us being anything like free scoring. They are a top 4 contender, albeit one that's had a bit of a wobble. He's right. Pope was lucky not to be sent off at the weekend. They scraped past Wolves, and the feeling up there seems to be that they're coming here to collect 3 points and nothing less. Their most recent form, allied to our recent home form, shouldn't give them quite the confidence that they have. We're a 9-2 shot with the bookies to win at home. I'm not saying we're going to, but there's value there, and I think we're well overpriced in that market. Tough game, no two ways about it, but it's not going to be 3-0 to Newcastle.
I agree. Like I said, I don't think it will be 3-0 to Newcastle. I think it's going to be very hard for Forest to win because the question of where do the goals come from is so prevalent. I mean,
exactly.
If it is Andre Ayew who starts, he's not really looked like scoring. I mean, obviously he had a penalty kick and missed that. I'd rather see Sam Surridge start. Emmanuel Dennis, we discussed earlier, has been very hit and miss. So it would hinge a lot on Morgan Gibbs-White. And his form hasn't been quite at it as well, has it? I mean, he struggled at Spurs, I thought, as well.
Yeah, and you can target him, can't you? If he's been isolated as our threat, and they're not talking about Brennan Johnson this week, and that they're not talking about the aerial physical presence of Chris Wood, then yeah, of course they are going to look to deny space to Morgan Gibbs-White, deny possession of the ball to Morgan Gibbs-White, and if our plan has become one-dimensional and relying on him to be creative, then it's a pretty easy thing for them to focus on stamping it out. So we need John Joe Shelby to step up to the plate, Dennis, as we've debated, and one of Surridge and Ayew, depending on who starts. It's going to be really tough. I'll be interested to see if we assert ourselves in terms of possession, because there's been 1 or 2 games recently where Newcastle have had far less of the ball than their opponents, and the chief frustration amongst Forest fans has been those games where we have been back foot, absorbed, deep block, look to counter, because I don't think that serves us well at all. I really hope that we treat this game in a positive sense, much like the pattern in the Championship last year, because there were a lot of games, Matt, where we weren't flying out the traps first half, but we did find a way to be in the game on 55, 60 minutes when changes were needed, and we could be that little bit more attacking, because I just don't see where we're getting these points on the road. You know, I really want to make a case for where we're going to go and win games away from home. But if we conclude that we're not, and we need to find a path to 38 points, then we have to spring another surprise. This has to be another Liverpool game, another West Ham game, another Palace, Leeds, whoever. All these great wins at the City Ground, and yeah, there's it's going to be really tough. I am more concerned than I have been for the last any time in the past couple of months. But yeah, I'm motivated by your colleagues' absurd prediction that we're going to roll over and let them tickle our bellies, because that won't happen at the City Ground.
Well, as you say, I'm more concerned than I have been. I've been unwavering in my conviction that they'll stay up. But if they were to not lose this one, but if they were to lose or only get 1 point from the next 3, then it's going to be an uphill task. I mean, I think the next 2 away games are the best 2 chances, really. Leeds away, Villa away. Villa's home record isn't as as strong as their away record. So they are probably our best chances. It was an interesting thing he said earlier about the low block and the way we play. One of the things that Andrew said was that Newcastle struggle against teams that sit deep and ask them to break them down. So I actually imagine that's the way we'll play, if assuming that the Forest analytics team are much better than us at picking up on how Newcastle struggle. So I expect actually that we might just sit deep and say, like we did against Chelsea, have the ball, break us down, and we almost came unstuck doing that. But I think that might be the way that Forest go about it and try and hit them on the break.
Whenever we come against a team that plays 4-3-3 with 2 out-and-out wide men, as Newcastle do, with St. Maximin in particular, I'm always concerned with a narrow midfield when we let wide players just walk onto our fullbacks. And we did it we did it with Jack Grealish as well. Just allowed them we were so deep that we allowed them to isolate our fullbacks one-on-one, and it did lead to a lot of creativity. I just hope we engage those wide players further up the pitch, and don't let them dictate the territory in the game by being unopposed, given that we are relatively narrow in midfield, relatively expansive up front and at the back. That's been one of my key criticisms when we have set up defensively in various home games this season.
But we did it with Spurs as well, didn't we? I mean, the left side of the pitch was an absolute farce at times, and poor old Loddy had no cover at all. And we discussed Trippier breaking forward. Whoever plays that left-sided role, it might be Surridge, it might be Ayew. I think Gibbs-White might be the central false 9 again. They're going to have to track back. and St. Maximin v Aurier, a battle of the Mavericks, although Aurier has been much more consistent than we expected, is going to be interesting. But that third central midfielder, whether it's Freuler, whether it's Mangala, both of them, they're going to have to be defensively disciplined, aren't they? Because, like you say, you can't give St. Maximin 30 yards to run at Serge Aurier and Joe Worrell, because he will absolutely kill us, won't he?
Yeah, it's happened a lot, and I think it's one of the things we haven't quite got to grips with since making that change to a back four. It's the one weakness in this system that you concede 2/3 of the pitch out wide at the expense of denying them space in central areas. That could suit Newcastle because they have a couple of chalk on your boots wingers who are happy to hold their position. So yeah, like you say, our analytics team will look into that, but it's a deliberate ploy because the alternative to countering it is to make us a bit more exposed centrally, where we're without a lot of personnel and still scrapping for the right blend. I hope we can get to that Koyate, Yates, Shelvey mix relatively soon, or Freuler steps up and delivers a level of performance that befits him staying in the side, because yeah, that's it. It's so key, and you're coming up against performers of the level of Guimaraes. They're not going to give you a minute off, and they're used to affecting the game and operating in very small pockets of space. He's one of the best in the Premier League. I put him up there with Bruno Fernandes in being effective in traffic and still finding his feet, making his pass, having an impact, even when he finds himself outnumbered in the centre of midfield.
Final point before we go then. Now, I'll put the table up, and we're recording this before, I think Southampton play Brentford and Palace play Brighton, something like that. So there's a couple of teams playing tonight. So forgive me, the table will change, but the general point remains that it's so tight that if Forest can get a win or even a draw attempts, it changes the picture going into that international break very nicely, doesn't it?
Yeah, the psychology of being several places above the drop is important, because goal difference could yet come into play, and ours is relatively weak. The league position tells a bit of a lie, because we had a similar league position 2 games ago, but the gap to the bottom 3 was much greater. It's a bun fight. It really is. I don't want to call it. I'm still pro Forest, pro our chances, upbeat, positive, going into every game that we can find a way to win. But there's no denying that the way we all felt after putting Leeds and Southampton back to back has fallen away with that result at the weekend. So yeah, one way to change it: get back on the horse, beat a team you're not expected to beat, and all of a sudden things looking rosy and the pressure is applied elsewhere. Other teams are under pressure too. Palace are dropping like a stone. Their form is absolutely horrendous. And while they find themselves at the top of this group of relegation candidates, they're not out of it. Their form going back 10, 12 games is far worse than ours. I just hope we can avoid successive defeats. I'd be proud of a draw. I'd be elated with a win.
And as you say, by the end of this month, this team could have Koyate, Yates, Awonyi, Niakate, 3 or 4 players back in it that put a different complexion on how good they are in the middle of the park and what a goal threat they are going into the final stretch of the season. So we're obviously at another pivotal point, but it's a nice opportunity here on Friday night, hopefully, to take some positive momentum and reverse this trend. We are one of the teams with negative momentum at the moment. Us, Leicester, West Ham, probably the one, and Palace, as you say, they're the teams dropping, and Bournemouth and Southampton, who do play tonight, are the teams with a bit of a resurgence or a bit of a battle in them.
Yeah, but look, you use the phrase "nice opportunity." This isn't a free hit. This is a team that we could conceivably beat at home. We've changed so much. I wrote down the team that played Newcastle at Newcastle, opening game of the season. Henderson in goal, Worrell, Niakate, Bekena, Toffolo, O'Brien, Colback, Williams, Lingard, Surridge, Johnson. Conceivably, only Worrell may feature in this 11 compared to that 11. We think Surridge might play as well. We've changed so much, but I've always seen the logic in what Cooper has done. And even when he's made a selection and it hasn't quite come off, he's not blind to it. He's made changes. He left Wood out after those initial performances weren't quite what we expected. He gave Aurier a chance. He grabbed it. He's backed him. There is a logic to everything that Cooper's done. So I'm definitely not in that camp that's laying any additional pressure at the manager's door than the pressure that he puts on himself. He'll be telling the boys, this is a winnable game. We don't need to go into this with any kind of defeatist attitude. Anything can happen. We're playing against quality opposition in the Premier League, and they've got their own ambitions. But it's to draw on your phrase again, it is a nice opportunity. It's not a free hit. We cannot write this one off. We must have a go.
Yeah, absolutely. A good note to end on. Unless you've got anything else you want to add, any other business before we depart?
I'd just like to congratulate your hungry kids on staying out of the kitchen for another half an hour. I think, fending for themselves at 3 months and 2 is just fantastic.
9 and 6, I should say, although that's still pretty young to fend for themselves. So, yeah, I'll go and check they haven't set fire to anywhere in the house and let you go. So, if you do like it, as usual, do like and subscribe. Give us a good review. It's very much appreciated. And Temps, thank you very much.
Cheers, Matt. Enjoy the game on Friday, and I'll see you next week.
Yeah, as Temp said, enjoy the game, have a good weekend, and we shall see you on Monday.